Prego a tutti di prendere posto.
Good morning to you all. We can start. And I was waiting for Francesco. Good morning. Good morning. I represent the bar of Lucca, and I welcome you on behalf of the bar and on my behalf. We are very happy about this event. This event has been supported, the organizational support has been supported for the organization by several institutions. I want to thank the Bank of Lucca, the Cassa di Risparmio of Lucca, two entities which are very present and close to the territory. They have been very available, ready to listen to the bar's needs in order to organize such an important event. I also want to thank the magazine Sole 24 Ore, which is well known. And also I want to thank Il Dubbio, which is the magazine, the newspaper of the bar. We have the sponsorship of several entities, and I thank all the sponsors, such as Trento University, the Union of Criminal Houses, Criminal Chambers, and also IMT, that is to say the High Study School. I also thank all the speakers. We have many speakers. They are all outstanding speakers, and I thank them for having accepted our invitation here in Lucca in order to share with us their knowledge, their experience, and I thank their support for this event. A special thank you to the two bars, to the Association of Bars in Trento and Lucca, and this event actually was organized 2 years ago in Trento. This year it is our role. Next time it's Verona's role. It's a wonderful synergy for such an important and delicate subject. A special thank to the bar of Lucca, because when we decided to organize this event, no one of the association members had a doubt about organizing this event in a suitable way. So a special thank you to all the association members. If I have to mention someone, is with no doubt Francesco Spina, who is our secretary. He worked very hard in organizing today's event, and he invested energies and time to the detriment of his professional and personal life. So a special thank to Francesco, who is a wonderful secretary, but he has also an international band. He is the most international one, let's say, among us. And this is an added value, and I want to thank him for them. I also want to mention 3 other people, such as Paolo Cristofori Mencacci, Valentina Mevelic, and they want to thank them because they actually and actively gave their own contribution to the organization. Without any doubt, I haven't mentioned someone, but I did so because I have a human brain. So if we use AI or chat GPT, no one wouldn't be forgotten. So I made a test, and I realized that this is the case. I mean, if you use AI, you can have an introduction which is excellent without forgetting anyone. So, but this morning I wanted to use my own human brain as such. It has deep gaps and defects. So please, I apologize for that, and please forgive me for that. Talking about AI, I can tell that a few years ago, I had the chance to participate. I was the treasurer, and I noticed that Lella Parenti is here. She was our former president, excellent president of the bar in Lucca. Now she's a member of the Forensic Congress meeting, and I thank her because she entrusted me with several assignments, and she gave me to make several experiences. Thanks to that, I had the chance to meet someone who, for the first time, told me about AI. It was 2019, before COVID, before the pandemic. And I was listening to this person, thinking about what is he talking about? But as a matter of fact, he was able to understand what will happen later on, what is happening right now, and what will happen in the near future. So AI, we're going to talk about it during this event, although probably we have talked about it too much, because it is also beautiful to discover what will be in the future without questioning too much. So the lawmakers intervened at EU level, at national level. Personally, frankly speaking, I do not know what it will be. Everybody says that this phenomenon has to be ruled. We have to exploit it actively. We have not to be overwhelmed by AI. We have to be an active partner. We have to play an active role. But nowadays people feel lost. I mean, personally, frankly, I am a little bit lost because I do not know. I do believe that this will be a key revolution, not at an anthropological level, but it will be a revolution. So I do not know about the end of such a phenomenon, but I know that whenever we feel lost, we have to find a reference. And one of the men who will be remembered forever gave us a reference point telling that the species able to adapt will be the only one that will survive. And this is the challenge we face. So now I thank you once again, and I give the floor to the chairman of the Association of Bars in Trento, lawyer Angelini. Thank you very much. Thank you, Flaviano. Good morning. Good morning to you all. I do share the wonderful words of my colleague, Mr. President, and I thank him together with the forum and the bar. And I am here on behalf of my own bar, together with Flavia Bettitonini and Mrs. De Bondi. I thank the organizers, and I thank the two ladies who helped the Lucca organizers for this event, which is very important indeed and unique at national level. This is the second edition, and as you know, I'm pretty skeptical concerning this technology. And I do not use it, I do admit, but I will adapt. I must do so. And today, I would like to remind you that this is an important day because the law 132, dated September the 23rd, will be into force. That means new cases, new accusations concern in particular the application of 231 of Law Regulation 231, Article 13, Paragraph 2. This is important because it states that we have to provide information to our customers. Not using AI, we have to inform our customers concerning AI systems that are applied. So according to the first interpretations we can read, we should specify licenses, rights, everything in line with the EU regulations. So be careful, because if you do not comply, you are wrong, because that has something that has to do with the trust relationship with the customers. So from today on, those using AI must be in line with this commitment. They must comply. They must comply with this regulation. As for the spreading of AI in lower studies and offices, I want to make references to the CENSIS data. This is very interesting generally. These figures concern the trend of our profession, so it's something to think about. In Trentino Alto Adige region, colleagues who declared to use AI are 37.1%, in Tuscany 26.5%, and in Venetian 28.6%. I make reference to our three associations. Nationally, it's equal. The average is 27.5%. These figures are important, and they refer to 2024. The members of my association let me think that the figures are definitely higher than that, because AI runs very fast. And next year, our figures will be even higher than that. My personal concern is the following one. AI can, in particular among young people, because the national percentage is 37.4 among lawyers of 48 years of age, while for lawyers of my age, the percentage is equal to 24.6%. So AI shouldn't encourage us not to think. Human criticism is the foundation of our lives. Young people must not adapt to AI. This is my own opinion. Because the fatigue, the efforts we made for our researches is wonderful, because whenever you find something wrong, something that does not concern your case, something that can be useful for another case. So such a research is tiring, but is very productive in my view. We never have to think that we should focus on the last part, that is to say, the decision-making stage, just to make a decision. We must not, we have not be lazy mentally, because afterwards, when you get used to that, when we are all adapted, when we are all familiar with that, then we cannot avoid that. Prices will increase, the system will be more and more exclusive, very expensive in my view. That will be a problem for young people in particular, if they want to start our profession in a competent way. This is my conclusion. I mean, I know that the message implies some concerns, some doubts. I will follow with great pleasure the works of this very important event. Interdisciplinary characteristics, because we have speakers coming from different spheres, and this is very important indeed. Thank you very much, and have a good work.
La parola a Francesco Tregnaghi, che rappresenta qua più che degnamente l'ordine di Verona.
Molto indegnamente, da consigliere il mio presidente aveva un'udienza, stranamente ancora qualcuno ne ha, e quindi sono io a portare i saluti. Spendo 30 secondi solo per dire che, per ricordare che noi tre ordini non siamo insieme qui per caso, ma perché eravamo i tre ordini che avevano un componente, che hanno, adesso ce n'è un altro per la verità, italiani, che hanno un componente all'interno della Commissione Nuove Tecnologie di FBE. Commissione che ha fatto tante cose. Una delle ultime, non solo, ieri abbiamo tenuto una competizione di legal prompting, cioè vedere chi riesce a ottenere in tempi stretti i migliori risultati nello sviluppare un tema che gli viene dato in quel momento, ma che ha fatto anche delle linee guida per l'uso dell'intelligenza artificiale, che avevano lo scopo di dare una prima, diciamo, strada ai colleghi che ci si volevano
for the
affrontare.
colleagues that wanted
Ebbene,
to
la
start
legge
studying it.
italiana
So
poco
the
fa
Italian law
ricordata, che entra in
that
vigore
was
oggi,
mentioned a few moments
ha
ago,
preso una
that will come
direzione
into force
completamente
today,
diversa,
took an
secondo me
opposite
un po'
direction.
miope,
I think that is
nel chiedere
not
di informare con
the
chiarezza
proper one. So in asking
usa un
to
altro
inform clearly, and they
aggettivo,
also use another adjective.
il cliente sui
For
mezzi
example, the
utilizzati,
customer must be
che è
informed about the
un'affermazione
tools that are used,
velleitaria perché
which is like
come
saying nothing,
funzionano e
because
come
considering
vanno
how the
utilizzati
process
questi
works,
sistemi
and considering how
di
these
intelligenza
tools,
artificiale, come
this
funzionano
artificial intelligence
soprattutto,
work,
spiegarlo con chiarezza al
explaining it
cliente
clearly
credo
to a
che sia
customer,
estremamente difficile,
well, I think
se
that
non
that's
impossibile.
extremely difficult,
Detto
if not even
questo,
impossible.
ultima cosa, la prossima edizione sarà a
Having said
Verona,
so,
questo è certo,
the
è già
next edition
deliberata.
will be
Non
held
è
in
ancora
Verona.
scelta la data, ma sarà
We're not sure of the
probabilmente
date
intorno a
yet,
metà novembre.
but it should be
Dipenderà
around
naturalmente,
November.
a cercare le sale,
We'll have to
trovare
look
anche gli
for an
accordi
appropriate
con
context. We
l'Università
have to strike
di
some deals
Verona
with the
che
universities,
ci
with the
aiuterà,
University of Verona,
immagino, a
that will
sviluppare
help
la
us to
prossima
develop the
edizione.
next edition of this
E quindi vi aspettiamo
event,
tutti a Verona in
and
date
therefore we'll be very happy to welcome you all in
to
Verona.
any of our
In a date I will let you know of.
our guests from abroad. We will wait for you mid-November probably next year in Verona. Thank you very much. E lascio la parola al vero succo dell'incontro, alle nostre sessioni. Prego.
Buongiorno a tutti e benvenuti. È per me un grande onore e un grande piacere moderare oggi il primo panel di questo eccellente evento internazionale. Sono particolarmente contento di dare il benvenuto a personalità così importanti in questo panel. Purtroppo non posso continuare in italiano perché il mio italiano non è abbastanza buono. Therefore, I would like to welcome you again in English. You see that
Grazie.
even though I'm reading this is very
Grazie per avermi accolto, appunto sto leggendo, ma è molto difficile, quindi è per questo appunto che parlo in inglese. Quindi vorrei ringraziarvi per essere qui con noi oggi. È un vero piacere per me lavorare con voi per poter parlare dell'intelligenza artificiale e delle risorse umane. Mi chiamo Dominic, sono un avvocato e faccio parte dell'Associazione degli Avvocati di Linz in Austria. Nel 2024 sono stato a capo della società appunto di avvocati e sono all'avanguardia delle iniziative degli avvocati sulla digitalizzazione e l'utilizzo dell'intelligenza artificiale negli studi di avvocati. Ad esempio, al momento abbiamo appena pubblicato una guida sull'utilizzo dell'intelligenza artificiale nell'avvocatura e stiamo preparando un'altra guida tecnica per aiutare gli avvocati in Europa a selezionare tra i vari dispositivi disponibili quando si parla di intelligenza artificiale generativa, così che possano paragonarli.
Today, at this panel, we will explore how artificial intelligence is transforming the way companies and public administrations operate, how they organize and create value, and how, more fundamentally, technology changes our legal and ethical frameworks around work, responsibility, and human judgment. We've also heard it from the presidents of bars of Lucca and Trento. It is still within us all a lot of uncertainty regarding the future of AI. There is skepsis, but there is also the prophecy of it being a fundamental revolution. But first, let me introduce our distinguished speakers. First, I have Mr. Alfredo Maglione. He is the president of the Optoi Group and the startup accelerator Industrio Ventures. He is the vice president of Confindustria Trento, responsible for digital transition and technological innovation. He has a long-standing experience in microelectronics and innovation ecosystems and will share insights into how Italian companies are integrating AI into production and organization. Then we have here on our panel Professoressa Barbara Marchetti. She's a full professor of administrative law at the University of Trento. Her research focuses on European and global administrative law, and she currently coordinates a research group on artificial intelligence and public administration. She will discuss, among others, the challenges and safeguards needed for responsible use of AI in the public sector. And finally, last but not least, Michele Kettmajer is a lecturer and writer for Il Sole 24 Ore and member of the Scientific Committee of Artificial Intelligence at the Pontifical Auxilium University in Rome. He works with ministries and communities, foundations, startups, and schools on the topic of AI. He's also an author of many books in that area, and he invites us to rethink the digital discourse. We will start with individual presentations, and I will give the audience afterwards the opportunity to ask questions and present comments to our speakers. So, when the first questions arise, please take note of them and save them for our discussions later on. But now, let's not lose any more time. Mr. Maglione, you have the floor.
Thank you, Dominic, for the welcome. If you don't mind, I will go on in Italian language, just to be more precise. Buongiorno a tutti, grazie di questo invito.
Good morning, and thank you for having me here. I would like to thank the Bar Association of Lucca, Verona, and Trento. In particular, I would like to thank Flavia Betty Tonini. Ever since the beginning, she involved us in this very beautiful experience. I'm very glad to be here with you today to share my contribution, specifically as an entrepreneur and as an engineer. I will try to share my ideas when it comes to the vision of artificial intelligence and human resources. So these are the two main topics of this panel within the entrepreneurial sector, in particular considering the company's point of view. I would like to take up this opportunity to read on behalf of Confindustria Trento. And I would like to say that my speech would be a personal one, so I will not speak as the Vice Chair of Confindustria. I would like to list in a very pragmatic way some topics and how we're dealing with those within the industry sector. This is just my personal opinion, but quite often this is shared by the great majority of entrepreneurs and of the industry sector. Whenever we see artificial intelligence, which spread in recent years, so in the last 3 years we've been talking about artificial intelligence a little bit more since the launch of generative intelligence, like for example ChatGPT. But as you know, we have been talking about artificial intelligence for 50 years now. Considering our local territory, an important research center like the Foundation Bruno Kessler has been working on artificial intelligence for 40 years now. The huge change happened because of microelectronics. And I'm an expert in this field. This is the sector and the field I work with, microelectronic and electronics. So artificial intelligence exploded over the last years because of the calculation ability of microprocessors, which skyrocketed. And thanks to data centers and thanks to systems of data analysis, which are very, very fast, it is possible to do what is possible to do right now with artificial intelligence. This is a great opportunity in the entrepreneurial sector. We consider this as a great opportunity, even if, as it is right to do so, it is also fair to take into account the risks and not only the opportunities. In our field, we face new technologies. Right now, we're talking about a new industrial revolution, for example, Industry 5.0. So this would be the 5th industrial revolution. And it's the one in which we'll see the strong introduction of robotics and artificial intelligence in our daily lives, but also in our everyday job. Remembering that this is a revolution that we decided to put the person and sustainability at its core. We should always keep in mind this, because I think that it will help us to better understand and better control these tools. We always have to keep into account the ethics of it. In a SWOT analysis, we have to take into account the ethics of it. Every single day, I make choices considering the risks, the opportunities, strengths, and weaknesses. I will provide you with some pragmatical examples right now. In the majority of cases, whenever it comes into this SWOT analysis, we see a greater advantage in adopting this artificial intelligence and tools rather in not using those. Some of my colleagues just said it. There's a sort of initial difficulty in understanding fully these technologies, and therefore companies are a little bit lost. Generally, all of them, but in particular, the small and medium enterprises are a little bit lost when it comes to artificial intelligence. It's very difficult for everybody to fully grasp what these tools are about and keeping up with their evolutions. Every week, there's new models that are launched into the market that are ever more vertical. And I'm talking not only about generative artificial intelligence, I'm also talking about applied AI. Because usually in our companies, especially the industries and factories, generative AI is used a lot, but people are starting to use more and more AI that helps industrial processes. Artificial intelligence is making more and more efficient, for example, the management of logistics. The productive processes are becoming more efficient. Quality checks. All of this is becoming more efficient, for example, thanks to computer vision, which is empowered right now also by AI. Just to give you some examples, in the whole sector of healthcare, for example, therefore in the industry that produces healthcare-related machines that end up in hospitals, like, for example, MRAs, or the tomography systems, or all of the other imaging diagnosis systems, are taking a huge advantage from AI. Because thanks to AI, they can elaborate a huge quantity of data and they can support doctors whenever they need to give a diagnosis that can be much more accurate without actually having to personally study the database with all of the pictures of a cancer with billion of information, just to give you one example. Just to give an example of what is happening in the healthcare sector. Let me dwell a little bit more upon this, because still the difficulty is there. It is difficult to keep up with this evolution, and therefore when it comes to companies, for 2 years now, we launched a campaign to improve the knowledge about these tools in all of the Confindustria in the local territories. We have the assessment processes, so the entrepreneurs of the small and medium enterprise who wants to understand better how to use AI and where to use it, because there's a lot of different industry process. We can provide them with an analysis, an assessment, which is provided by experts of the sector. So at the end of a project that lasts 1 week, they can provide analysis and assessment of the specific company, and they can also tell the entrepreneurs where it would be good for them to start using artificial intelligence, for which process, give them an idea of how artificial intelligence can be used to make the whole process more efficient. And this is helping a lot the industrial process, because we are finding out that there's some taboos, some prejudice, and when we have this assessment done by external experts, this helps a lot to understand better the tools and where and how to use them. And our companies, as I was telling you earlier, usually decide to start with experimental projects. They start step by step. They decide to try using LLM rather than artificial intelligence in some of our processes. So it's a learning process. which is a slow learning process. This is a very strong and huge revolution. So if we not face it with the right knowledge, then the risks in the SWOT analysis can increase. We're all aware of that. As of today, we're mainly seeing the opportunities of doing what specifically. As it had already happened during over the past 4 industrial revolutions, we're seeing, for example, the opportunity of working in a safer way. We can have automatic work. We can have, for example, the analysis of millions of data can now be done by machines, not by people, because when it comes to the analysis of huge quantities of data, machines are much more efficient than people, by far. So when it comes to those kind of activities, for example, in the industries for services or in legal firms, but also in industrial processes, let me give you another example. For example, the assessment of whether there were some patents that were done about a specific topic before. So the ability of analyzing all of the patents that have been presented whenever we want to present a patent ourselves. Before, it used to take weeks or used to take a month. Now this analysis is done much, much faster. Consider commercial processes. Just to give you an example, up to a few weeks ago, there were some commercials in our groups, and it took them weeks, when not months, to do analysis of database of companies that might be potential customers, to find out which could be the actual potential customers. For a few weeks now, we have been doing those same things, crossing the database of millions of companies, considering artificial intelligence. And this artificial intelligence, thanks to some criteria that are defined by us. So I would like to stress something that will be mentioned and repeated over and over during these 2 days. It's clear that artificial intelligence is a tool that has to be handled by people at the beginning and at the end. The idea of trash in, trash out, the idea of putting in criteria and data has to be done by a person. Like, for example, the control of the output. Whenever and until we'll have the possibility to feed the models and to check the output, this will give us the opportunity to have the control over these machines. And this is what we do right now. We give them the input of millions of names of companies with a series of features. We set the criteria, and in a matter of few seconds, we get an output of a list of 50 to 100 companies compared to the initial million companies. So this final list of companies are very likely to become our customers. And I assure you it works. So these are examples in which we see that these models make some operations faster in a very significant way. I would like to consider C as an extension of human capacities in certain fields, and the results lead to better efficient. Let me quote one last topic, which is technical, which is also about artificial intelligence, which is linked to cybersecurity. For 10 years now in the world, and starting January 2017 in Italy, as you know, the Industry Plan 4.0 has been activated, the calendar plan, so to speak. So, in my opinion, this is the most important plan for industries over the last years, which brought great benefits to the entire industry sector to acquire machines, to produce machines, and it gave a push to the economies from 2017 to 2020, the year of the COVID. So all of the companies invested a lot over that period of time, and they bought smart machines that had to be connected to the network, and therefore all the production lines filled up with interconnected machines. but machines that are vulnerable because of this interconnectivity. So as you can imagine, so we have these machines with a lot of data of all the products that are easily accessible. Over the last few years, these machines are equipped with artificial intelligence. A very tangible challenge is the safety security, so data security, and also protecting the access to these machines. We're working on it, so the companies are working on solutions. And in particular, there's some companies who work in the field, which work in the field of cybersecurity. So there's this will to strengthen these machines with artificial intelligence. We want to do that, yes, but at the same time, we must make them less vulnerable and safer. So there's the whole topic of cybersecurity, which is very important also at the national level. And we have several plans at the national level as well. So the last thing that I want to touch upon when it comes to AI for the companies, we're facing the legal aspect of it ever more. Up to a few years ago, we did non-disclosure agreement with certain clause. Instead, in these new agreements, we will have to add this chapter about AI. Because when our customer asks us to develop something and they provide us with confidential information and we are asked to keep those safe, to keep those confident, our researchers, our engineers cannot just do prompt engineering to find solutions with those information. And they cannot add confidential information within those AIs. But this is a whole new topic that maybe we can dive into the details later. If I still have 2 to 3 minutes to go, I'd like to talk about human resources. So let me give an example of Italy. So there's a lack of staff in Italy. There's a lot of difficulties to find people who have a STEM graduation, for example. So there's very few people who have skills when it comes to data analytics, and there's even fewer people who actually have skills when it comes to AI. So this is the situation, which is not common in the rest of the world. Let's think, for example, of India. So next 10 years, the Indian economy will grow incredibly fast. It will become the 5th to the 6th economic power in the world, and they have no problem whatsoever when it comes to HR in this field. The development of companies and industries in Italy, it's already limited a lot by the lack of human resources. And because of that, we must come up with innovative technologies, like, for example, AI, that can help us to improve efficiency and productivity, given that we do not have the staff to do that. AI, as we know, is a paradigm shift, and it is so in human resources as well. This is one of the other technical shifts in which the selection of the personnel and having personnel who are skilled in artificial intelligence is no longer in line with the criteria that were there a few years ago. So we had interviews with boys and girls, so these people started working in our companies, and there was a training for them which lasted 1 to 2 years so that they could become skilled and productive. And this training was provided by the seniors. So, for example, the employees that have been working in the company for 20 years. This changed completely because when we hire somebody now, when we hire somebody who is skilled in artificial intelligence, the day after he would be or she would be the one training the older colleagues about AI. So the company culture is changing as well. If we want to introduce AI in the companies, the best way to do so is to have this share of skills based on people So people are always at the core. So boys and girls are the ones bringing forward the innovation of AI within the companies. Of course, we have the opportunities to come up with projects, to cooperate with universities, with researchers, but the actual transfer of knowledge is done thanks to people and through people. And these young people, they have different criteria. They assess the quality of a job offer with different criteria. As we know, for example, they care much more about work-life balance than what we did and what we do. They care more about other values that were not so important a few generations ago. So we must foster a favorable working environment for these young people. We must accept that it's usually us or often them who bring forward this innovation, and we must change our mentality whenever we're hiring people, because there's an issue with attracting a competent staff, but there's an even more serious issue when it comes to retention. These people with these skills, with this vision, which I share, by the way, stay in a company if they see that what they do help them to bring forward the progress of humanity. So they stay there if they are given value. And these are different models. So a career, for example, that lasts 15 to 20 years to get to a managerial position. These young people, when they enter, they want to see a clear growth path, and they want to be recognized their value almost immediately. They want to have important position, managerial position, quite soon. And we must engage them when it comes to equity as well. So when it comes to the retention rate of these people, the schemes that we used to retain them is much different than what we used to do a few years ago. And if we don't do that, it's quite simple. In a few months, these people would just leave for somewhere else. I will stop here.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Maglione. A very insightful view on the current state of play of Italian companies and the problems arising in practice. I do already have a bunch of questions, and I am sure our audience has as well. But we should first hear out our second speaker, as we have just heard how AI moves businesses and production and organization. Let's hear also about AI in public administration. Professoressa Marchetti, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Dominic.
Thank you very much for the organization of this event and for the hospitality in such a beautiful town, Lucca. My speech will be slightly different from the previous one. First of all, because the context where AI is applied whenever we talk about PA. Plus, since I'm a legal expert, I have in mind problems and not only opportunities related to AI. So for public administration, AI is an outstanding opportunity. Public administration, thanks to digitalization of processes, now has a very important quantity of data. Therefore, thanks to AI, it is possible to use those data in a very effective way. So no doubt that PAs are using this technology. According to the data provided by the European Commission, in 3 years, we shifted from 200 applications up to 950 cases. These data dates back to 2024, and in the future, the increase will be even more relevant. Why in the public sector, why can we face more problems than in the private sector? Well, the shift we experienced. So, first of all, PAs have been using AI for a while, but I'm not sure about the definition. because it is the so-called symbolic AI. So the public administrations have been using deterministic algorithms based upon hard rules, such as the expert systems. For example, if we use an algorithm to define the best offer for a tender, that has never been a concern in the past because these algorithms are based upon randoms. So we are able, as legal experts and as public administrations, we are able to explain why the machine processed a specific output based upon specific indications. So there is no conflict with the so-called public values, the principles of the public actions that are by now an essential core of rights for citizens in the public sector. A decision based upon this algorithm, a deterministic one, can be explained. Well, the decision is not that accessible. There is a source code, but we are able to explain why we achieved that specific result. So if a company win or not a tender based upon an algorithm, well, it is possible to explain why. But if we think that the important shift is the one from symbolic AI to the machine learning based upon automatic algorithms, well, the situation changes a lot because these algorithms are based upon black box. That is to say, they are blur. It is not possible to explain them. It is not possible to explain why we achieved a specific result given specific inputs. A huge amount of data is processed. Sometimes data are provided to the machine through a supervised training. That is to say that the operator explain the data, explain what are the data to be processed, but sometimes this is not the case. And therefore, the operator cannot explain the output because it is not a random logic. It is a logic based upon statistics. So from the PA's point of view, that changes the scenario completely because, for example, if I am the beneficiary of a decision made with a machine learning algorithm, according to which I'm not liable to be granted a loan, a subvention, or if I am considered as the responsible for a fraud. So the consequence for the citizens is very important indeed legally. That means that a right is denied with no chance to explain why the machine, based upon those data, achieved such result. So you can understand that this type of AI, which is much more performant than the symbolic one, well, this type of AI engenders several problems from different perspectives. And that involves not only the ordinary law, but also the common law. So, for example, generally, whenever we are the beneficiary of a decision which is not favorable, we can participate to the process. We can defend our rights, but not whenever we have AI. Then there is also the transparency-related issue, which is twofold. On one side, we have the black box, and so it is not a transparent decision. On the other hand, often those providing the system to the public administration, and often it is a private provider, makes use of the copyright. So we had several cases in Italy, in Europe, all over the world. And in those cases, we had the citizen wanting to understand the reasons of that decision versus the copyright-related problems. So personally, I think we have several problems to face, and our association stated so. An algorithm is never neutral. It implies choices. That is to say, a combination of data and the way the system has been designed. Then, if the choices are made by a private provider, maybe they do not correspond with the PA values, such as the principle of discrimination. And this is a key problem because often data implies a bias. I mean, I do not want to be completely negative because several ways to use AI are accessible to PA without the direct impact on the citizens. For example, in Italy, we can notice that by now, considering the case laws, public administration uses AI without these criticalities. For example, the conversational AI. Many public administration uses a chat box 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and this is an important factor, and thanks to that, PAs are much more effective. Other examples, systems analyzing data, and in doing so, they provide useful information for public administration policies. Even in this case, there are few impacts for the citizens, but there are huge advantages for the public administration. If a city has to make a decision concerning the mobility, well, the public administration can benefit a lot from AI because it wouldn't be able to gather, process, and analyze this information. Another example, which is a little bit more worry. So the tax authority, in Italy and in France, tax authority gathers many data. In France, it gathers all the data existing on the social. There is a matching, and through that, PA identifies individuals subject to a tax check. It goes without saying that this does not imply a decision, but nevertheless, it implies some concerns. It is a limited procedure because afterwards the inspection, the check is carried out by human operators, as well as the final decision, which is made by humans. But are we really sure that the PAs is entitled to use our data on the social? Whenever we enter a data on the social media, are we aware of that? I mean, if we write on the socials how many times we went to the Maldives for vacation, I mean, are we sure that that couldn't be used for tax reasons? So, I mean that risks and opportunities change depending on the role played by AI in public administrations. The more AI is involved in decision-making, the more risks occurs related to bias, to blurring. The less AI is involved, the less risks are evident, and we have more advantages than risks. This is the approach that EU adopted in writing the regulation 1789 for the regulation, because according to the regulation says that I have to cover all the aspects, all the types, versions of AI, including the generative one. But we have different risk levels depending the sectors. For example, justice is a typical high-risk sector. There are applications which are forbidden. There are applications which are not considered as at risk according to the regulation. For example, tenders, according to regulations, is not a sector at risk. How many minutes? 3 more minutes? Right. In conclusion, I would like to share with you a remark, although it's difficult to sketch the scenario in 15 minutes. As you know, EU regulation has been criticized. Mario Draghi said that it shouldn't be applied for the high risk. I do not agree at all. I think that generally, according to Joshua Bench, and he programs Frontier AI, regulation is not a barrier to innovation. There are other obstacles at UE. In my view, this regulation is too mild because at the end of the day, it defines by design requirements for systems in order to implement them in the public administrations. But for many other sectors, there are no rules, there are no requirements. So many sectors are not included by this regulation. But we have a law 132. For many perspectives, in my view, it is a way to provide general indications. And we have Article 14 concerning PAs. Italian lawmakers made an essential choice. They say that public decisions must be made by humans, always. Just one last remark. What does it mean? Because my concern is the following one. We are in line with this principle, and we decide that the machine limits to make a recommendation for a decision, and the decision must be made by humans. But there is a problem which has been emphasized by Garapon, that is to say, the Moutonnier effect. There are many tests in behavioral psychology showing that machines are much more persuasive than humans. Humans may be convinced by machines very easily. And this is the challenge for PAs. First of all, they have to train employees very well. Employees must be critical for AI. They must be aware of its limits, and they must be able to bypass the machine. This is the key point for the relationship between machines and humans, not only for public administration, but in general for our society, which has to coexist with this technology, which is absolutely different from the previous ones, that implies a deep transformation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. Public authorities somehow deal with the same problems, but then have very specific issues because the decisions they take are binding by law for citizens themselves. For me as a lawyer and an Austrian who knows the state of play in Austrian public proceedings, this is especially interesting, and I have an example that I want to ask you afterwards if there's still time for that. Last but not least, we have the honor to hear yet another view on the same issue, you would say. Mr. Kettmajer is known to take the bird's perspective on problems and see the bigger picture, a more philosophical and ethical view, I would say at least. Mr. Kettmajer, please, you have the floor. Thank you very much.
Buongiorno a tutti.
Good morning, everybody.
Ho ascoltato tutti voi, è molto bello.
I listened to all of you, and it was very nice listening to you all. And the professor was just mentioning a theory of mind. There's to say the ability of a person to persuade somebody else. When ChatGPT was launched in 2022, in November of 2022, it has the ability of persuading people, just as a 3-year-old could do. For me, AI is a female when it's right and it's wrong, and when it's wrong, it's a male. Anyways, that ability was for 3 years old. Now, 3 years after, the ability of the persuasion ability of AI is of a 9 years old. The hypothesis is that it would be able to persuade adults and like an adult. So we're talking about generative AI, but we're also talking about the AI that is used in other contexts, and it's evolving quite fast. We're talking about it right now. Today is what it is. I don't know if tomorrow we'll be able to say the same things that we're saying right now, because the growth is exponential. The chair, for example, the chair of Trentino was a little bit skeptical. Instead, the chair of Lucca was a little bit more enthusiastic about it. There's a lot of debate and heated debate about it. I understood that here I cannot play as the devil's hand, but anyway, I like to give a short speech because I would like to actually have a conversation with all of you, because I think that the debate, the discussion is actually the only thing that works whenever we have to face AI, because I do not believe that they're actual experts of AI. I believe that there's people who try not really to understand it, but to take it into account. We can observe it, we can ask it questions. These are the only things that we can do whenever we're dealing with AI. And I think that this is the goal of the 2 days. Last year, I participated to the edition in Trento, which was very interesting. So the organizers here as well, I think, are creating a shared context where law is not running after AI, is trying to anticipate it. We also need this when it comes to law as well, and I'd like to know what you think about this, given that you're experts of the field of this subject. How can we think of law in this way, and how can law actually anticipate AI? Because if you think about it, well, it's a big deal. Yeah, it's a huge opportunity, but it also poses great risks. I'm not scared of it. I'm not a detractor, but I do not support it fully. So yes, it is a huge opportunity, but it's very dangerous, and we're not using it in a proper way. Maybe Alfredo thinks that we're using it in a correct way, in an industrial level. But generally speaking, we're not using it properly, and we're repeating the same mistakes that we already made. Let's think of another technology that we use in quite a bad way, like, for example, plastic. Plastic is an amazing technology, but now there's islands of plastics which are as big as Sardinia in the ocean, or atomic energy, cement. We never look forward enough whenever we had to implement a new technology. We were never responsible enough towards the environment and towards our kind whenever we implemented a new disruptive technology. The shift that we're living is the shift from Anthropocene, so the Earth as focus on men. We're growing closer, we're getting to Artificine. There's to say AI not only is already here, but it's building something different, an artifact. It's building an artifact of the Earth. So it's not longer men who decide what the Earth should be about, but it's AI who does that now. Another of my major concerns when it comes to this powerful technology is of the powerful people who control it. As you know, there's quite a few of them. I would say max 10. So Bezos, Musk, Altman with ChatGPT, Solana Pichai, and a few others. Some of them, for example, produce hardware. NVIDIA is becoming a huge power with the greatest capitalization in the US. So these powerful people have the ability to tell us about the future and to prepare it. Here we can think of a future, the future that we'd like to see, but it's difficult to actually get there. Bezos is one of the richest people in the world. He has over 300 billion in his bank account, not taking into account the capital of his companies. He almost forgot about Amazon if it weren't for the revenue, because he gains $1.7 billion per day. But he almost left it, and he decided to deal with Blue Origin. So this society of his, Space Society, has more than 9,000 researchers, astronauts, philosophers as well, and law experts. So his idea is that we should leave Earth behind, and it's much more probable that this idea of his will happen than what we are thinking right here, because the Earth is getting too warm. There will be not enough space for everybody, so the oceans will evaporate, and then climate change will destroy everything. So his idea is to move the majority of humankind to other planets. And it will not take a lot of time to do that. So in his hypothesis, he thinks this will happen in a few generations. So he has 9,000 employees. Musk, on the other hand, one of the other powerful people, so he was also, let's say, sort of the president of the US when Trump made him the head of the Doge. So apart from Tesla and Neuralink, so the society which will basically plant chips within the brain to help out those who have limbs diseases. So Musk built his society, his space society, which is called SpaceX. He believes as well that it will no longer be possible in the future to live on the Earth. So his idea is that we will run out of resources. So there will no longer be food and of the other resources. So he has 11,000 employees. So Bezos and Musk together have 20,000 employees. NASA has 17,000. When I was younger, NASA used to be amazing. It used to be something about sci-fi. We thought of it as sci-fi. Instead, basically, right now, it's much more about Blue Origin and SpaceX when it comes to space missions. Musk, so to take 1 kilo of the space, so for NASA, it takes them $25,000 to $30,000. For SpaceX and Blue Origin, they can get the same quantity to the space with less than $7,000. And Bezos and Musk are trying to reduce this cost, but they're gonna make it, I'm sure of it. So the chair of Lucca was talking about this fear that we have for the unknown technologies. But if you think about it, a few years ago, I was reading some mythology. So it was Hephaestus. He was the god of metals and fire. And he did a very interesting thing. He was one of the few gods who was not good looking. He lived under the earth and he worked with fire, and then he grew tired of it and he created 2 golden maidens. And these 2 golden maidens are the first ever robot. Because when Homer tells us about them, Homer says that they are able to think, they were able to move, and they were able to manage knowledge. And I believe that Hephaestus in that moment So it was a myth for the communities who participated in the rituals in that moment. But Hephaestus has not come up with a new technology. So these maidens that were taking care of the fire instead of him. But he invented the concept of delegating, so to delegate. So it was the first time that God, in this case, decided to delegate his capacity to act to a machine. And this is quite an important concept if you think about it. So somebody who works instead of us. And work is quite an important concept. So now we no longer have this factory. It's something different. It's an AI, an algorithmic factory. So it's no longer about technologies. It's no longer about technique. It was never about technology. The essence of technologies is helping out mankind and our planet if we do this together. But right now, this technology instead is developed by these powerful people. And if you think about it, they decide what and how AI should be. None of us ever had the possibility of using a different kind of AI or in a different way. We have to use the AI that is forced upon us by these big tech corporations which gain profit out of us, like social media. The history of social media is very interesting as well. There's no idea whatsoever to create models to share information, to spread information. The idea behind it was just to make profit out of it. So there's this new idea, this new factory, which is about algorithms. So the issue becomes a political one when we have to understand what is human, when work will become an extension of machines. What is left to us? This is one of the questions that law should ask itself. Even before the questions about the ethics, before the questions about the regulation of AI, which of course is very important. So talking about work, the other day I was listening to Mustafa Suleyman. He's one of the greatest of AI. He's working on a new society. After that, after leaving Google. So the name would be Personal AI. So now we have the opportunity to create the artificial twins. I have artificial twins and I ask them information in loop to all of them. So I ask for them for an analysis and to an artificial intelligence, and I asked to the other 4 AI where the first one made mistakes and so on and so forth. So these artificial twins are trained on ourselves. So mine is trained on me, considering what I studied, the books I read, because I tell AI what I read, the articles I write for, the newspaper I write for. So Suleiman says that according to his researchers, so law experts, for example, of course he says he cannot predict the future, but he says that 300,000 jobs will be lost in the next years. I don't know whether this figure is probable, whether it's accurate, but 300 million people, a million more, a million left, well, that's a lot. So Hitler, with less than 2 million unemployed people, did the mess that he did. Europe and not only there. So marginal productivity is not bound to increase with AI. Only the average productivity might increase, the industrial ones that my colleague was mentioning. If the average production will increase, it's not a given that the marginal productivity will increase as well. So it is not a given that there will be more jobs. So there's also a risk of social tensions that might spark because of AI. So I'm saying system because there are some production chains and extraction supply chains that we're using with AI. We're going to mention that in one of the next panels when we'll talk about environment. So there's some chains that are used a lot, are extractive. Let's think, for example, of rare earths that became famous when Musk asked for those to Zelensky. So these rare metals, there are 17 of those, are needed to create batteries, to create parts of electronics, like, for example, monitors, our smartphones. So to extract those, like for example, titanium, we have to basically to destroy 10, 12 tons of mountains of rocks. So think of the area of mountains that has to be destroyed because of this. Then we have to put these rocks in sulfuric acids, and all of this is leaked into the environment with all of the consequences. In Europe, this is not allowed except for some areas in Scandinavia. In China and in Africa, it is possible to implement these processes. In Africa, we are seeing this new era of colonization, and then there's this work environment, and then there's the ecosystem of democracy as well, apart from environmental democracy as well. Because as Professor was saying, once these machines will be able not only to describe the situation, because AIs can also give suggestions, and it starts predicting. This is quite used, for example, in stock exchange, so the ability to predict even a few seconds, even a few fraction of seconds. So seeing where a bond would go, for example, or a share would go. So the colonization that we're doing, considering the work of people, so people who work in the field of AI, we gave tenders to companies in Africa, for example, in Kenya, in Uganda, but in other locations as well. So the locations to train machines, as we were saying, we have to train it constantly, AI. And this is done by the people who live in the south of the world. A few years ago, there was an article that was published on The Guardian. So they did this huge analysis, and basically, according to their findings, there were a lot of corporations which gave the tenders to women with degrees in law, in sociology in Kenya, in Nairobi. So it gave them the job of watching videos on Facebook. There's an attempt of posting 1,250,000 pornographic videos. 20-30% is not blocked by AI, because AI is not able to tell that this video is pornographic. So these girls have to do so. So for 10 to 12 hours per day, they have to watch all of these videos for $3.50 per day. I was in Fortaleza, in Brazil, recently, and I saw a lot of young children and teenagers. So they no longer have their thumbs, because their thumbs basically are hammered, while they try to crack some rocks to see whether under those rocks there's some material that can be used or for a smartphone, for example, or rare earths. So we are colonizing, once again, within the field of AI. And there's this part of the world that works quietly, so that the other part of the world might believe to be thinking faster. And we need to ask ourselves some questions on these topics. I will conclude, because I don't know. Okay. Let me go on for another minute so that we can listen to the questions. So the right to these new possibilities, the possibility to create a collective intelligence, also a connective intelligence that is able to strike a balance between power and to spread and redistribute knowledge in a more ethical way. So in the 20th century, law was one of the most important things to protect the bodies of workers. Now, I believe that the duty of law is the one to protect the mind of workers and their cognitive abilities. So it's up to you, and you have quite the challenge ahead of you. And I wish the very best for you, for the well-being of all of us. Thank you.
Grazie. Thank you very much. It is as we would have planned it, that the speech of Mr. Kettmajer brings me back to another question to our speaker, Mr. Maglione, but Ms. Professoressa said she wants to have the floor and wants to respond real quick to what Mr. Kettmajer said.
Thank you very much, President. No, mi ricollego proprio a queste ultime cose.
Thank you very much. I would like to make reference to what our colleague has just said. Actually, there is a need for us to direct big companies on other roads different from those they would choose. But the current geopolitical scenario hampers a little bit that. Trump administration built up a wall against EU regulations. The only important world player not able to produce AI, but nevertheless, EU thought about rules and regulations. With this regard, I would like to mention two papers. Kay Crawford, a few years ago, published a book titled Atlas AI, showing all the hidden costs of AI, because we keep on thinking that this is something for free and intangible. On the contrary, the environmental and social costs are really, really high. For the crowd workers, the badly paid workers employed to labeling and using the systems. In addition to that, there is a very interesting book by Anu Bradford titled Digital Empire. He analyzes the problems related to the three models to AI. The USA model, which is market-driven, that is to say that everything is done for the market's sake, no rules, the Congress is paralyzed, Trump administration canceled, the only one who tried to go for good. Then we have the Chinese model, which is state-driven, satisfying the party and state needs. And that is an inspiration for the development of AI in China. And then we have the European model, which is currently attacked both internally and externally. I think that this is the only model defined as rights-driven. But as you can see, considering the new big predators, that is to say, big companies which allied with the USA power, well, this last model cannot do that much.
Thank you very much. My question was also geopolitical, and it connects to what Mr. Kettmajer said. He cited Mr. Suleiman saying we are maybe losing 300,000 jobs in the next years to AI. And my question would be to Mr. Maglione. What would you think, even if we do not lose 300,000 jobs to AI, may there be a switch in positions in knowledge from the subjective scientific knowledge to, or not even knowledge, but workforce at least, to AI jobs or to IT jobs? Because what I hear and what I see, also in Austrian authorities and at EU level, there is papers mentioning that we will have to fund IT jobs more than, for example, judicial jobs. We have to reduce judicial jobs because we have the support of AI applications. But on the other hand, we have to increase funds in IT jobs. What would you say?
Grazie Dominic per la domanda.
Thank you very much for your question. It was 300 million. 300 million jobs. It's always difficult to assess. It's a mental projection that we have to carry out, so I cannot express a judgment on that. I am just a material engineer, and usually I work with objective data. The previous 4 industrial revolutions have been accused because of job loss, but then it was never the case. Not even with the 4.0 revolution, with the introduction of robotics. I think that it will not be the case either. We will not lose jobs, but as you said, Dominic, there will be a shift of skills. New jobs, new types of jobs. I think that this technology will reduce employability of hard jobs. Technology, typically, if it is properly used, helps the development of humankind according to objective data. In Western economy, technology improved quality of life, prolonged the longevity. So I want to consider past data in a positive way, and I hope that that will be the case in the future. I want to think that technology will help us for hard jobs, and I want to think that a worker, an employee, could work more on creative aspects in order to better use his or her natural intelligence, creativity, pay more time and attention to his or her well-being. And I base my thought upon the previous industrial revolutions. It goes without saying that it's up to us, and by us I mean the participants today, but also the 3 models that have been mentioned, that is to say USA, China, and Europe. So by us, I mean also these 3 entities. We are responsible for us. I mean, the European model is the basis, the foundation of the European culture. That is why it's our responsibility, it's our task to support our models, and we have to work for that in a constructive way.
Thank you very much. I will now give the audience the floor to ask their questions, because otherwise we will run out of time. Are there any questions from the audience to our speakers? Please.
First of all, can you hear me? No? Can you hear me? Great, thank you. So, first of all, and I go back to my seat. So, first of all, I would like to thank once again for the high level of the speakers and the speeches from the very beginning. You all said very interesting things, fruitful thoughts, but all that also leads to concerns. So there is room for thinking, but also for worrying. Anyway, it's a boost, an encouragement. We have to overcome our concerns. I really appreciated and I felt more involved. I really appreciated the invitation by the law community. I mean, I appreciate laws for evident reasons. Often, during the human history, lawyers, legal profession was involved in order to solve problems that otherwise couldn't be solved. I make reference to the solution of wars, avoiding wars and conflicts, armed conflicts. There is a long tradition of the so-called legal pacifism, that is to say the possibility to delegate to legal profession the ways in order to avoid wars, making reference to something that is out-fashioned a little bit. That is to say, international organisms. International organisms such as UN, in the past, they played a key role. That was the case for the Cold War. UN played an essential role in order to avoid wars. Unfortunately, nowadays, we don't hear talking about UN that much. It is an international organization, and as such, it applies legal rules at the international level with several characteristics. I say so because I think that even this revolution, if it is not ruled by legal regulations, can turn to be something that is not controlled. I mean, I do not want to be negative, but the risk is that each state can do what it wants. And this is a huge problem because we in Europe, we issued a regulation. In Italy, we also have a law. But what about the others? Since we live in a globalized world, and from the economic perspective, there is no doubt about that, my question is, what about the others? Because we have rules, we run at a given speed, but if rules are not shared by the others, this is a problem. It is unthinkable for us in a globalized world to have rules in Europe, in the European Union. But if these rules are not abided by India, for example, India is a wonderful country. I met some engineers from India during a travel by train, and I talked to them, and I felt a little tiny person because what they said was extraordinary. So, international organism, shared rules and regulations. I'm just thinking out loud voice. So, I have not the solution. I have not the answer. The older I get, the more questions I have without answers. But we should think about a kind of global sharing for rules and regulations concerning AI. Otherwise, I think that it will be a serious problem. I would avoid that Europe that I really like. I wouldn't like that Europe would lag behind because of its fear against innovation. Because of that fear, EU takes the risk to issue rules without building up a sharing of those regulations with other partners. This is a key point, in my view. I remember what President Bill Clinton said during one of his state missions to Paris. Paris is a wonderful city, nothing to say. He was very happy, very satisfied. And he said to the French president, everything is fine, everything wonderful, but I have the doubt or the certitude that you Europeans, at the end, you will be the keepers of your museums. And that is my worry, my concerns. So despite AI, Europe may have not the strength, not to say no regulations. This is not what I mean. But I fear that Europe has not the political strength to tell all the worldwide partners to write down rules and regulations. So I have a question to all of you on this point, because I think that legal profession sharing rules, well, they are both very important indeed. So in conclusion, don't forget that during the latest 30 years, we globalized economics, but not politics, not at all. And we did not globalize laws. That is why we are still at war. There are still wars. There are still ongoing wars, and that's it. So we are talking about artificial intelligence, but war is the evidence of human stupidity, and that's it.
Thank you very much. A question that actually touches on every speaker's speech, because this has economic, this has legal, and this is also philosophical terms. What would you say? Who wants to answer first on this great question? Thank you.
Very quickly, I do agree with you. Actually, it is a matter of regulation, and it is also a matter of speed. I make reference to the report by Mario Draghi on competitiveness. In few words, we can be competitive if we want to do so as Europe, and we have to focus on innovation and speed. So we have not to bypass rules, not at all. I do agree that we should make an effort in order to have common rules. We have to admit that in the western part of the world, in the eastern part of the world, we have two administrations that will not listen to Europeans, not at all, China and Trump. Personally, I think that nevertheless we are responsible for rules, and we have to issue rules very, very quickly. Speed is important. Europe, and Italy in particular, during the latest decades is too slow in reacting, facing this innovation. And I mentioned Darwin. According to Darwin, you have to adapt, but you have to do so quickly, otherwise species disappear. Well, I try to answer by saying that EU regulation has a scope that is extraterritorial. So USA and Chinese providers have to abide. That is why Trump is so angry with us. He says that we are not kind with his big tech. And that is why he threatens to increase duties if we do not do something for its big companies. Secondly, Draghi said it so clearly. The problem is not represented by rules. The problem is that we have small enterprises which are not able to be competitive with the USA companies, and they are not able to carry out a scale economy. And that is due to several factors he analyzes, such as lack of investments, in particular public ones. We are not appealing for talents unlike USA. USA is able, I mean, if we consider all CEOs and computer scientists in America, they have all origins which are not USA origins. They are children or grandchildren of people who went to the States, and state universities know how to appeal resources. Europe is not able to do so. This is another problem. In addition to that, Draghi said that we have not a union of capitals. So first of all, we have to solve some economic problems. Then we also have regulation-related problems. But the problem is not regulation by itself. The problem is that Digital Service Act, AI Act, and the Digital Act overlap. And there are some enforcement systems that refer to different authorities. This is a problem. That's why the Commission started a strategy in order to solve the problem. But rules are needed. Everyone says so. All the authors, such as Russell, Benjo, and so on and so forth, they all say that we need rules because AI technologies is too dangerous not to have rules, not to control it. So the European pathway is right, no doubt. There is room for improvement, no doubt. Trump administration right now is strongly having a negative impact on the geopolitical scenario, no doubt either. And Trump is allied with the big company, and as long as this ally lasts, it will be difficult for us to find shared rules and regulations. So USA are the main obstacle to us, no doubt. Thank you.
Ma se ci sono altre domande invece che rispondere io.
I don't know whether you have additional questions. I mean, we can use the time we have for additional questions rather than for my answer. No questions, so I answer to the question. I do agree with the President. When Google started,
il payoff, quindi
the
sotto
payoff
Google c'era scritto don't be evil,
was
non
don't
essere un
be
diavolo.
a devil.
Dopo circa un anno,
After 1 year,
le comunità, soprattutto orientali, asiatiche,
Eastern communities asked
frase perché
for this sentence to be
una figura positiva, no?
deleted because it was referring to Apple, that is a positive entity. So, I mean, it's very difficult to issue ethical rules that can be accepted by everyone, considering the differences that exist. Last summer, Ackman went to the Arab world, and he had 7,000 million investments for its companies. Here in Italy, in Europe, sorry, we talk about 50 million euros, so peanuts. So maybe we have the capacities, but it's difficult to direct these capacities. There are interesting theories from the East dealing with the cosmotechnics, the capacity for all the communities all over the world to work upon a common idea, the difference between techno-diversity, the diversity, the diversity of knowledge, and biodiversity. I think that that could be a good model to start from. We have to design rules on these three important characteristics, that is to say, human knowledge and technology. But we have to work very hard. I do not know whether we will afford it. I like Draghi pretty much, but he forgot that he managed Italy for 15 years, and then he said what he said. Some things he said can be shared, but probably he forgot he was responsible for EU economics for many years. I mean, this is not an easy task. I think that our economic managers should think about, should better direct the contributions that countries give to Europe on a daily basis. Thank you.
There's one question, please.
Sì. Allora, io una domanda è un pensiero che
It's not really a question, it would be rather a comment.
Allora, paradossalmente io molti anni fa
Paradoxically speaking,
una tesi, diciamo, sulla
a lot of years ago, I did my dissertation on globalization and on ethic codes for companies.
Diciamo, venne fuori quest'idea che in realtà la
Because there was this idea that globalization could not be regulated by the outside, but it was up to the companies, even international companies. And my dissertation was about several subjects, like, for example, law, economics. Anyways, it was up to companies to follow these ethical codes. They had to believe these codes and to follow them. So every company had its own ethical code. But then I asked myself in this dissertation what kind of value these ethical values could have, codes could have, if a customer saw that these values were not respected. So I don't want to delve into this topic right now. But anyways, I asked myself, maybe the regulation should not be an external one, should be an internal one. So considering these corporations, considering those who work with AI, I think that it should be a movement starting from within. So maybe they should come up with rules, generic, basic rules that should be shared and followed by everyone. Rules about common principles that all of the countries should follow, all of the politics and policies should follow. So, principles, basic principle that this company should follow. So there would be, for example, some institutions that would come up with stricter rules, some with rules which are a little bit more lax. So it would be up to those who use these rules to, for example, the countries or other companies. So it would be up to them to decide whether to use an AI or not, or a different kind of AI. Would it be possible to have something like that?
Thank you very much. It's very interesting to hear that kind of perspective. I have been last week on a conference in the EU Parliament, and Mr. Staudenmayer, the chair of the DG Just Committee of the European Commission, also presented us with a lot of initiatives that the EU is bringing forward when it comes to the digitalization of justice. And they also highlighted that they want to do or want to make their initiatives voluntary, because that is the state of the art, that is the action of the time, he would say. So an interesting, very interesting view on this. Somebody else who wants to respond real quick? Otherwise, I will sum it up. Thank you very much then for the rich discussion. I think what we have heard today is that, oh, there is one question, real quick, please. Could somebody? Okay.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to congratulate you because all of the speeches that I heard were really interesting. So I would like to share a few thoughts with you rather than a question. Considering this new industrialization, what really concerns me is the fact that the human is getting lost. There's this sort of fever that looks at this innovation, this technology, but I would want for this to lead us to lose our humanity. So I wouldn't want this to lead us to an extreme transhumanism. Pope Francis, for example, when he wrote Laudato Si, when he talked about the technological paradigm, he was not condemning the use of technology and technology by itself, but how we use this technology. Because talking about globalization, talking about common and shared rules, this is a 360 degrees approach, but implementing this into the practice, whenever we try to implement this, we actually face the ethical issues, the human values. We should not forget that one thing is the development and one thing is the progress. Progress means respecting human values. And this is not something that we should not take into account. So I would like to ask for some sort of broad reflection on this topic. So this AI risks to create a new type of mankind, a new kind of mankind which is not the artificial human, because we will never fully understand how far AI can go. But it will be never able to take the place of human beings, because there's some topics that is not just about creativity, sensitiveness, but also our own spirituality. So we need to keep this into account. Thank you.
Grazie mille, thank you. So to sum it up, I think that we have heard today that AI is a technical revolution, but also, as we just have heard, a human one that challenges how we organize work, how we make decisions, and how we allocate our competence. And it is a great, also, we discussed this in depth, a great geopolitical challenge to find balance between regulation and being competitive on the international floor. So please join me thanking our three panelists for their insightful presentations and reflections. And thank you all for contributing to this dialogue. Thank you very much.
Comunicazione di servizio, c'è un breve coffee break nel chiostro.
So now we'll take our coffee break on the right.
10 minuti.
It would be a 10 minutes break, please. So please rush.
Se volete cominciare a riprendere posto, per cortesia.
If you may please take your seat so that we may start.
Spero che sia partita anche la traduzione. Mio onere presentare brevemente.
So I'd like to briefly introduce the next panel. Unfortunately, there were some last-minute change. Professor Flor should have been here from the University of Verona. At first, he was supposed to be here in person. Then we also sent him a link to join us online. But unfortunately, he cannot join us because he is currently in Rome. So he cannot join us. But we found a perfect substitute for him. So will join us remotely. Silvio Ranise. He was supposed to be here today, right now. We're really sorry that he cannot join us in person, but at least he can join us online. Then in the panel there will be Gabriela Bar on my left. She's a colleague from Poland, of the Bar Association of Wrocław. She's an expert in technologies, she's a lawyer and an expert in technologies. She has been many other things, which I cannot list right now, but she is also a member of the New Technologies Commissions of the FBE, of which I am part myself, which is chaired by Maria Dimitruk. Then our last-minute substitute is absolutely perfect. His name is Roberto Flor. I do not know how to define him. He's a propeller of several activities. He's a chief of technology and innovation, of director of Jeddah Group. And last but not least, our chair, I say our chair, because she is the chair of the New Technologies Commissions, Maria Dimitruk. She's from Poland as well. She is also part of the Bar Association in Wrocław. She's many more things. Apart from being the chair of the FBE, Commission of New Technologies, she is also chair of another committee. She participated to numberless projects at a European level, but it would be better to listen to them, so we'll give the floor to Maria.
Thank you very much, Francesco. Thank you very much for this kind introduction. Let me add one sentence to what Francesco said. I consider myself to be a specialist in AI, but I have one minus in this full scope. I am not an expert in cybersecurity. That might be a surprising fact, take into account that I'm going to moderate the panel on AI and cybersecurity. And I would like personally to treat it as a good lesson. I hope that I am hearable. Not really. Right now? Oh, better. Sorry, guys. So I started with some very honest statement about my knowledge in cybersecurity and the fact that I would like to treat this opportunity as a lesson for me, because I work a lot on legal aspects on AI, and among all those topics, the cybersecurity topic is something that I really would like to still go deeper. And today I hope you too will have a chance to hear a deep debate on the topic of AI and cybersecurity from three perspectives. Take into account that we have a legal expert, IT expert, and a representative of academia, which is connecting with us online, treat it as a chance to go deeper. I will start with my questions, but obviously there will be a floor also for you to ask more. Dear panelists, thank you very much for accepting the invitation to join the panel, and it's an honor for me to be here. And when I was appointed as a moderator of this panel, the first idea that crossed my mind was actually about how to approach this discussion. It's a very broad topic that can be touched from very different perspectives. And cybersecurity as a concept is something that we all value, all share. So nobody would say, I don't care about cybersecurity. We all do. But what does it actually mean? Our audience, you are lawyers mostly. So what does it mean to lawyers, or what does it mean taking into account the legal perspective, the perspective of the state interest, the perspective of legal regulation around this specific notion. And obviously from the perspective of a state, it's a kind of obligation for our authorities to protect us also in a cyber sphere. But I would like to start these discussions about whether, or maybe not, cybersecurity is something that we should be given. Do we have right to cybersecurity, or it's a kind of a measure to something bigger? Let me ask first this question to Roberto. Sorry for asking so hard question from the very beginning of our discussion. So do we have right to cybersecurity, or we don't, but we're supposed to be?
Oh, a very tough question. So good morning, everybody. Let me say one thing that probably I share with the professor. We are working together on some topics since some years, that cybersecurity is a shared responsibility. It's not something that you put on top of something, or something you can ignore. I'll give you an example. In our company, we're receiving probably 15 million emails per day. Half of them are completely deleted from the systems because they are spam or dangerous emails. But of the half that we received, a percentage is tentatives of stealing passwords, users, or data. So technology alone is something that helps to increase our protection, but it's not enough. So cybersecurity is something that is technology and people, consciousness about what technology can do today. So this is one part of the thing. The other part is, I mentioned you yesterday, I received an email from a colleague, the head of one of the companies, that says, why are you so worried about cybersecurity on AI agents? We want to use them, just no problem. So there is a push that comes also from the big tech, the hype that we have today. We must use everything because everything is speeding up. Be quick, use it. Don't worry, just use it. Again, is something that has to do with the competence that everybody and the consciousness that everybody has to have about the potential, the good and the bad potential of technology.
So it is rather seen as cybersecurity as a burden rather than something that is
sometimes yes, but when something happens or something does not happen because you've done something to avoid it, they say, oh, very nice. So, and the other thing that I want to say is that cybersecurity is not technology and people alone, but it's multidisciplinary today. So if you want to approach cybersecurity in a company, let's say, because I work in a company, you need HR, lawyers, compliance, business owners, because everybody has a different point of view and different interests in what you have to protect and how you're going to protect. And how it means technology, processes, policies, and training of the people.
Great perspective. We will probably go deeper into those topics later in a discussion, but you've mentioned the legal perspective and the responsibilities also from the legal side. So I would like to hear the legal side now. Gabriela, what is your position here? Okay, first of all, the very same question, whether we have right to cybersecurity, or if we don't, should we have one? And the second question is rather, where is the balance between our freedoms and something that actually somehow limited? It's a cybersecurity response to the threats.
Thank you, Maria. Hello, everyone. It's great to be here with you today. The answer to this question is not very easy, but I wouldn't dare to say that we have right to cybersecurity. Not yet, at least. But probably cybersecurity is a prerequisite to some other rights, human rights, like privacy, like dignity, for sure. So cybersecurity must be seen as not a burden, however, in fact, sometimes for companies it is, but rather for something that provides us the safety and trust to the technology. But this is always a trade-off, because if we have very strong cybersecurity measures, probably it will influence on our everyday work, on our communication, on our functioning, not only in business organizations, but in any organizations. If we have very strong cybersecurity measures, we also can't have transparent artificial intelligence, for example, because it's in conflict somehow. And if we want to have very strong cybersecurity measures, there is not possible to protect human autonomy and human privacy completely. So we have opposite goals having these measures in place. If we want to be very correct about the privacy, we need to think, okay, but how to deal with the cybersecurity measures? So it's not easy, and there is no one answer to this question. I think that cybersecurity, or safety and security in more general, it is the one of most important ethical principles that were mentioned in guidelines for trustworthy AI, worked out by a high-level expert group on AI. So we started with that. So let's say guidelines, some kind of soft law. But then cybersecurity has been introduced to AI Act. So it's strongly emphasized in this act as something that high-risk systems has to have. And of course, we have a lot of other regulations on cybersecurity, like NIS2 or DORA, but they don't create, in general, they don't create the right to cybersecurity. So we don't have claims to any organizations, oh, you didn't implement some kind of measures and my rights were because of that, my rights were infringed. Of course, it can be an argument in the court proceeding, in the dispute, court dispute, but it's not the right itself. And I don't think it should be the right itself, but it should be the way to execute safety and security in AI, because we are talking about AI systems today, but also in other systems like so-called normal traditional IT systems. And every organization has to do the risk assessment at the beginning or before they implement any kind of measures, cybersecurity measures. Because we need to understand what is the risk, first of all, for data subjects, for humans in general, what are risks for the organization, weight these risks, and decide, and it's usually a kind of a business decision, because it's never the same solution, and it's never perfect solution. But decision has to be made. Where is the trade-off? So how deep we want to go to cybersecurity, and how deep we want to go to protect human autonomy, human privacy.
Okay, so this time cybersecurity not as a burden, but rather a precondition for further rights, even very wild
distance.
Yeah, one. But I really consider your answer to be very well established within legal frameworks, but I'm also interested in the technological point of view from academia. I would like to hear the confirmation that Professor Ranise is with us and can hear us.
Yeah.
Okay,
hello.
Great.
Hi.
Great.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
can you hear me? Yeah.
We can hear you. I'm really glad. It will be a little bit challenging for us as I can't see you because you are right behind my backs. But okay. But let me ask the very same question to you, because I'm very curious to hear the perspective outside of the legal field. As someone with a background in technology, in academia, what's your take on this? Would you consider cybersecurity as maybe not a right, maybe precondition to something, maybe still a burden?
Okay, good morning to everyone. I'm really sorry not to be here with you. The point here is, it is a very interesting and difficult question, of course, what you have asked for. But I believe basically that there are, I mean, there is a very, it's a very...
We can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yeah, but there is a problem with the translation, if I understood correctly. Shall I go on? Shall I switch to Italian? It is up to you.
Is there any issue with the translation? Not to my knowledge, so we can continue in English.
Okay, no problem. Then I will continue, no problem. So, as I said, the question is very tough, but it is also a very interesting one. I believe that one of the problems with cybersecurity is the fact that you have to prove that you have put a lot of money and effort, basically, to put up some kind of mitigation strategies or other security mechanism in place, not to make happen bad things, okay? So it is very difficult to prove that you were so good to do this, because this is, I mean, showing that since you have put in place something that has not, in order to, let's say, prevent something to happen, is a very difficult thing. also from a political point of view, you don't put your money in this kind of task, basically, okay? It's not very, it's something that you don't get any advantage, so to speak. And there are a lot of memes, for example, around the internet with a guy counting small changes and a sign below saying cybersecurity budget before an attack happened, and then the same guy counting big banknotes, basically, and a sign below saying cybersecurity budget after an attack has happened, okay? So this is really something that is very difficult to argue, okay, on the one hand. On the other hand, I believe that we are all more and more aware that our life has moved, at least in part, to the digital world, or at least there are several different services that have been done before in the real world that now happened only in the digital world, or mostly, let's say, in the digital world. So basically, what has been the mitigations to the risk, or the guardrails that were in place before in the physical world now should transfer in order to maintain the same level of trust of citizens or customers and so on and so forth in the digital world. And so this is difficult because it's a change of mind, let's say, of people, right? It's required. And I believe that it is pointed out also in recent report, for example, at the European level. For example, there is this report by Enrico Letta that was basically writing about the future of the single market in Europe, right? And he hinted to a fifth freedom, or a fifth right, so to speak, of people, that to innovation, education, data, and knowledge. This is a very interesting fifth freedom, so to speak, because I believe that this freedom is a kind of a prerequisite to many other freedoms or rights, let's say. Because if we create the awareness into citizens, into people, into customers, in all the roles that we are playing in our lives while interacting with the digital ecosystem, with many digital ecosystems, I believe that we all are also aware of the risk, not only of the flexibility, potentialities, and the flexibility that all these digital services and applications, etc., give us, but also the risk related to them. Because unfortunately, as any other, let's say, system, artifacts, or services designed by humans, with opportunities comes risk, okay? So I believe that becoming aware of this is the right way to frame this very difficult question. So let's try to make people aware of the risk. And this is also part of something that we learn very quickly in cybersecurity. And it can be summarized in one sentence, in one quotation. So, this quotation says, basically, that amateurs hack systems. So they put an effort in hacking from the technical point of view, the systems, okay? But professional hack minds, meaning that the weak link in most cases is the user interacting with the systems. So there are a lot of phishing attacks. Before Roberto was mentioning phishing emails. Well, that accounts for like 85% of the attacks that happen around the world. Okay, so I believe that the making people conscious not only of the flexibility and the opportunities, but also the risk would give rise to people asking for the right to cybersecurity, or as a part, I believe, of these more general notions that was stated in Letta reports, that was right to innovation, education, data, and knowledge. I believe that this will really contribute to a more, let's say, not only interoperable, but also resilient and less fragile, let's say, digital ecosystem that we are using. This is my view.
Thank you very much. You shared a very interesting statistics about the source of attacks, the main source, which is internet. So we are speaking about, first of all, the balance between freedoms and security. On the other hand, where the risks are from. And now we are going to the very the most important notion during the whole conference, which is AI. So the technological development, how does it influence cybersecurity, threats and promises from one perspective, and the second perspective, because we all know that technological development is a two-sided sword, let's say. It can attack, but it can be used to defend ourselves. So maybe the technological progress made the task, the cybersecurity, an easier task, or maybe actually more complicated. And what was the turning point? The rise of internet, the big data world of, or AI, even generative AI, which is something that it's not brand new, but still you're in a very initial stage when it comes to even what was already mentioned, the awareness and this educational process that we are going through as a society. So maybe I will start with Professor Ranisse once more. From your perspective, what was the turning point, the first question, in terms of this technological development and cybersecurity? And the second question, has generative AI made cybersecurity stronger, weaker, the very same, very different?
Okay. So I believe that, let's say, since the beginning of the internet, we had issues with security. Basically, in the beginning of the 80s, there was the first worm that was introduced in the internet at the time that was much smaller than today, and it was an experiment of a student, of a computer science student. Actually, it was called Morris worm, and this guy was trying to understand if we can create a program that replicates itself and spread all over the internet. Unfortunately, he introduced a bug in the program, okay, that basically implemented the first denial of service attack. So basically, he was able to partition most of the internet at the time, okay? Because he basically saturated the resources, the memory, in particular, the computers that were infected at the time, okay? So just to give you an idea, from a financial point of view, the impact of this, which was a kind of a computer science exercise, okay, was like millions of dollars, was estimated like millions of dollars. The guy was put on trial, was like convicted to some kind of social works and stuff like that. Then he became a professor at MIT. So you see, it was really someone who was trying to understand what was going on, basically. So I mean, hacking and cybersecurity is really the same. From the beginning was there, this problem. Okay, so because an attacker is someone who is trying to find a way to induce the system to behave in a way that was not specified, was not designed for. This is the challenge. At the time was the challenge, but nowadays is cybercrime, basically. It's a financial motivations most of the time. So it evolved, this situation, because basically the internet was reached nowadays a scale that is unprecedented, basically. And there are a lot of, let's say, possibility in terms of financial crimes and to get rich in money laundering. This kind of stuff is very, very much easier than in the real world. So basically cybersecurity experts are really, really important in protecting this digital ecosystem on the one hand. The acceleration, a kind of turning point, I believe that was pointed out by the actual president of Signal, or the messaging application, Meredith Whitaker, who said really clearly that the beginning of this, so to speak, of the problem that we are experiencing in terms of threats to rights and freedom over the internet was the concentration of large quantity of data to few players, okay, the usual suspects. Let's say, I don't want to list them, but we all know who they are, basically. And so nowadays, AI models, these large language models, and they are created thanks to the fact that of the availability of such a huge amount of data, basically in few hands, basically, okay? So this is indeed problematic because nowadays you can control, if you insert bias or you edit, you create, let's say, the data that create the model, then you can, you know, say, give perspective on several different aspects of life or history or other aspects of this kind. So this boils down to something very, very important, which is integrity. Integrity is both a technical concept and a information concept. We talk about information integrity, basically, and has two aspects. One is a more technical aspect. You want to be able, from a technical point of view, to prevent the unintended or let's say, yeah, unintended modification of the data. This matters for authenticity of the data, for the origin of the data. Authenticating the origin of the data is also important. Who said something? It's very, very important, very, very relevant, and so on and so forth. There are tools and techniques from a technical point of view, basically cryptographic techniques, that allows you to guarantee this, okay? But this is not enough, because data typically are coming from well, the real world most of the time, especially if they are connected to events that happen outside the digital world, that happens in the physical world. So, for example, one wants to take pictures of some events and put it into, you know, to talk about a certain event in a newspaper or other stuff like this, okay? So if we are able to, so basically there is a jump, right, between the two worlds, okay? One is the physical world and the other is the technical world. So while in the digital world, we know how to prevent the tampering of this information, if I successfully modify and tamper the original video or picture or image or whatever other stuff, then once I protect that digital copy, okay, of this information, okay, that comes from the real world, then I am protecting something which is useless, or it is the basis of misinformation or disinformation or this kind of phenomenon, okay? So if I insert rubbish, so to speak, in the system, I can protect it very carefully and very successfully, but it's still rubbish, so to speak, okay? And so we need to understand how this transfer, how this jump from these two worlds, the physical and the digital world, happens, and try to set up procedures that allows us to audit, okay, to make it transparent how we import from one side to the other side the information. So information integrity encompasses these two aspects. So again, it is not only a purely technical task, it's much more, okay, that requires also semantic considerations, so to speak, because if I create an image with generative AI techniques, then maybe I can spot some kind of inconsistencies in the image that is generated, because it may not reflect fully the laws of the physical world, because, for example, the perspective is slightly wrong, or the lights and the shadows are not completely correct, and so on and so forth. So also this kind of analysis, like forensics analysis on this kind of information, this kind of data needs to be applied. And these are something that typically needs also human judgment, human ingenuity, so to speak, okay? So we need to involve, okay, we can ask the help, for example, of other AI techniques in order to spot this inconsistency that are more semantic, okay? But typically, these AI techniques needs to be, let's say, controlled by a human in the loop, so to speak, I believe. So you see, this is a very interdisciplinary task that needs several different considerations to be put into place, basically.
Thank you very much. We completely understand how broad the topic is and how challenging the task is to present it from different perspectives. But I also know that Roberto works with you on some projects together. So now I would like to turn this question to you, Roberto, because from your perspective as a person responsible also for cybersecurity within your company, which is quite big, as you've heard, few thousand employees, is AI your enemy or your friend in those tasks? Good to know. Please elaborate.
Oh, yeah, so the answer is yes instead of. First of all, you asked about the turning point. I think that the turning point was when we started being connected digital humans in a connected digital world. That was the turning point. So a lot of computing power, a lot of data, and everything connected to everything, everybody connected to everybody. So complexity exploded. AI in a company poses new threats. And to be very simple, I give you an example. We provide simulated phishing inside the company many times during the year. That means we send false phishing mails to every employee and see what happens. Then we provide training to see, oh, you click this, you should not click this. Do you know why? Just to give you an example, with as a professor said, using AI-powered social intelligence, you can create emails that go directly to the way people feel in that moment. So one campaign we did was just after the day when you received your salary, and saying there was a problem, so please you should check if something was correct. So we have a two-step phishing email. The first was you open the email and read it, and the second, you believe in what it's written and you put your username and password when it's requested. And actually, I have to say that 20% of the people clicked on the email, and 40% of the 20% put their username and password. So this gives you a dimension of the problem. And you don't, as I said, you don't solve it with technology alone. Awareness is something that we have to increase and continue to increase, because AI-powered attacks are very, very difficult to intercept. On the other hand, we are using AI to support our security team to correlate many sources of data that come from all the systems, email, file servers, applications, and this helps to find weak signals that can advise you that something could be happening. So you increase your level of attention on something which is very specific. So AI is also a very useful tool, because without AI we could not do anything like that, because the quantity and different kind of data sources we use to monitor what's happening is something that you cannot manage without the use of AI. So that's why the answer was yes to the question: is your enemy or your friend? The answer is yes, and it's a very let's say difficult balance, because you need to work as much as you can using these tools to provide something that helps you protect data, people, business. On the other hand, there is a trade-off between what you can shut down, let's say, or isolate because you want to keep it secure in a connected world. So it's very difficult to decide, and this is where multidisciplinarity comes in. How do you decide at which level you lock what your people can do? For example, I have one smartphone. I keep having just one smartphone, which shares my work life and personal life. So it took us 3 years to negotiate with compliance, HR, the fact that we're going to manage the business part of the data that is on this smartphone. But the problem is, how do I convince my colleagues that I'm not controlling what they do on their personal smartphone? I'm not doing anything on their data and their behavior. I'm just making sure that the company can encrypt and protect the data of the company and maybe delete it if you lose your smartphone. So there is one thing which goes beyond awareness and technology to protect people is trust. And this is very difficult, because if you want to really understand why I say I'm not controlling you, you need a very deep technology knowledge that not everybody can have. So in a company, this is something that you build with transparency, telling people what you're doing, why you want to do this, and why you're not going to get into their personal life. But you know, the boundary between personal and work life is blurring. So it's a very gray area.
And it's the reason of your trust issues as well. Okay, but we have touched a very interesting point in this discussion, because obviously human element is the weakest part of the cybersecurity chain. It doesn't change from the old phishing techniques in which you should not click the link, not even open the email, but when you opened it, just the clicking the link was the worst thing that you can do. But now we are in a phase in which we don't need to click anything. We are living in a world of agentic generative AI tools which actually do things for us. We live in a world with deep fakes that are good enough to convince the person to transfer $2 million to some bank somewhere, bank account somewhere, and it is no longer as simple as that. Don't click anything. And when it comes to those deep fakes, that might be actually a turning point from my perspective, as you know, you can be aware. I am quite aware. I consider myself to be quite aware when it comes to cybersecurity, and you still can be fooled in a perfect way, and the technology just allows that. And I want to go deeper into this deepfakes problem, but let me start with describing a legal perspective around it. Obviously, in European Union, we've got some kind of a legislative response to this issue, and it is within AI Act. Gabriela, if you could elaborate a little bit, what is the response of European legislator to this issue?
Thank you for this question. Yeah, really, deepfakes are one of the most manipulative techniques ever, I think. And the problem is that there are some research that if you see something, we remember this picture, we remember this video, even if after watching it, after seeing it, we get information that it wasn't true. It still stays in our minds, and it still somehow influences our way of thinking. Of course, probably it doesn't concern, it's not a concern for these of us who are very critical, who are very conscious how it works, but in general, it works like this. So, yeah, EU is looking for the answer, but maybe not hard enough, I would say. And one of my friends, who is not a lawyer, but when it was a lot of talking about AI Act, asked me, so now when we'll have an AI Act, so deepfakes will be forbidden. And I said, actually, no, at all. And this is, I see it really as a problem, because what we have directly connected with deepfakes is really Article 50 of AI Act. And what does this provision say? Only this, that deployers of AI systems that generate or manipulates image, video, audio content constituting a deepfake has an obligation to mark it as such. So deepfake has to be marked as deepfake, and that's it. Moreover, if that kind of deepfake is a part of an evidently artistic, creative, satirical, fictional, or analogous work or program, this transparency obligation is very limited. So we have two steps. First, of course, first step to assess if we have deepfake or not is relatively easy, because if the output is just manipulated image, video, audio, okay, it's deepfake. But you have to also decide if it's maybe satire or part of a creative work or part of the fictional work. So this obligation, it's not very strong. This is one thing. And the other, as I said, even if we know that this is deepfake, we still see the picture, we still hear the audio. And sometimes, even especially if you are in a hurry, if we just scroll Facebook or other social media, we just remind this what we just heard. We just remind what we just saw. And it somehow influences a lot of people, a lot of consumers that are not so conscious as probably we here are. And I was thinking also about using Article 5 of AI Act, prohibited practices. If I was thinking if we can use it in some instances to ban deepfaking. And I have to say it's quite tricky, it's quite difficult. I'm not saying that this is impossible, because in Article 5 we have such a general provisions that says that AI practice which deploys subliminal techniques beyond person's consciousness or, and this is important, purposefully manipulative or deceptive technique with the object to influence some people or group of people. So yeah, this practice by using deepfake, if this practice is using deepfakes, and this deepfakes has this power to manipulate, to be deceptive for people, it could be prohibited. But again, it's a lot of other steps we have to take to prove that this is manipulative or this is deceptive in the meaning of this provision. So I would say that, of course, we have also Digital Services Act, we have also consumers laws, and they somehow create an environment to protect us as consumers from manipulation, from deceptive techniques, from fooling us in general. But I'm not sure if in the world of generative AI this is enough.
Thank you for going deeper than I expected. So, because yeah, the general answer is just label the deepfakes and that's all. If you are labeling them, you're completely fine with AI Act. There is a possibility to reach to Article 5 and to different laws. So actually, I'm glad to hear that. But at the end, yeah, there is rather the right to know that something was artificially generated rather than the right to know the truth. Yeah. The image remains in our brain, as you said. So that's the perspective, the legal perspective. And I like to flip the lens and look from the technical side at the problem. And this is my question to Professor Ranise, because I know that you are very into you've already mentioned it, the integrity of the data. So from the technical point of view, how it can be ensured that the data actually reflect the reality or can be clearly identified as artificially generated?
Okay. Yeah, so there are techniques such as watermarking. So watermarking or steganography. Basically, the idea is to insert something in an image, for example, in overlay, so that the human eye cannot perceive it, but it's there, and with appropriate technique, it can be made it clear. It's like writing with lemon on a piece of paper and then put it on some closer to a source of heat, right? So all of a sudden appears the write-up, right? So this watermarking and steganography techniques are similar. Can be used, for example, with images that are generated by AI, with the generative AI, or even text. In the case of text, you can basically modify the way the generative algorithm works so that in certain positions of the text, certain words appear with certain letters will form a certain word, basically. So it's a kind of hidden secret game that can be used in order to identify clearly that the text has been artificially generated by some generative technique. By the way, recently in Italy, it has been published an article in a newspaper with the last sentences was the prompt to ChatGPT, so was clearly generated by an AI technique. It was really easy to spot it. But anyway, this highlights a problem, right? So that the quality checks of what is returned by these large language models or generative AI techniques in general should be done at a procedural level. So if for that particular newspaper, the checks in terms of editorial activity, etc., were correctly performed, probably this kind of sentences won't be included in the final result. Again, we go back to something, to what I said before also, is that we need to manage in a procedural way things that happen with the help of a generative AI algorithm. They are not necessarily evil. For example, a generative AI algorithm could help me write in better English or in better Italian or to improve the style of my writing, even if I put some context in it. Content, sorry, in the text. Improving the style could be interesting because it will facilitate the reading and will help my article or my paper to be read more easily, and the concept that I have expressed there is better expressed. So there is also ways to use in a positive way this kind of generative AI techniques. Also, it's not only from the only possibility, let's say, this watermarking and steganographic techniques. You can use also cryptographic techniques to show provenance. In other words, to show a kind of chain of custody, okay? So you may, for example, take a certain image and transform it for certain purposes. Yeah, you can crop it, for example, just to fit into the appropriate space, or because you want to zoom into on a particular detail of that image. Or you may transform it, for example, for some kind of satire or whatever others, right? So then you need to basically say, create a story of the transformations that have been applied to that particular image so that I can check, I can verify how each transformation has been performed, okay? And so this is very interesting because from a technical point of view, we know how to do it, okay? You use cryptographic techniques, you use metadata. It's pretty, I mean, so to speak, easy to come up with a toolkit of techniques that allows to do this. But the important point, and is one that already Roberto said before, is about the trust. Because, again, who perform that particular transformation should be honest, okay, and honestly reflect in the metadata which kind of transformation has been applied to the image, okay? So either he or she, the subject that performs the transformation, is malicious, and with the malicious intent transform the image without describing exactly what he or she did, basically. And this is the source of many misinformation or disinformation problems, basically, on the one hand, okay? On the other hand, it may be the case that the tool used for performing this chain of custody, right? The provenance, the reporting of the provenance of the transformation is produced, basically. So you use tools to do this, basically, to create this chain of custody that show the provenance of your image, right? And this tool may be hacked, or your account may be hacked, okay? So if this happens, then even if it is perfectly legal, okay, the transformation, it will be, it can be completely distorted or changed. But from a technical point of view, no one will realize that there was a problem, so to speak. Again, it's a matter of trust. This tool needs to be secured and managed in a procedural way in the most careful and way, so that I am trustworthy, okay, in doing that particular provenance activity. which is the foundation for this information integrity that we were talking about before. But again, as Roberto said, trust is a very delicate thing, because trustworthiness, in particular of digital system, has several different problems. One has been already said by Roberto, the fact that you need to be, so to speak, an expert in order to really understand what is going on inside the black box of these tools that allows you to perform, for example, provenance or other activities, okay? And so in order to really understand that how they behave, so that you expect what in output exactly what you have in your mind, this tool should return. So a provenance activity, for example, in the case we are discussing, this, for example, in the case of AI, it's debatable, because AI is not trustworthy by construction, because it's statistical, it makes correlations. So it not always behaves as expected because, for example, of hallucinations, okay? So putting trust in AI-generated thing is a very delicate activity, okay? It's a kind of a leap of faith that you are doing in this particular context because of the intrinsic nature of this kind of algorithm, so to speak, on the one hand. On the other hand, trust and guaranteeing trust is something that goes beyond completely the technical issues, okay? And when you talk about software, because this is what we are talking about, even tools that guarantee provenance of the image are software. So software is made up by developers, humans, that use other software to produce that particular applications or that particular service, okay? This is something that is always forgotten. So there is a complex infrastructure that allows us to produce applications, services, and stuff like that. If you insert some kind of malicious code, not directly in the application, but in the tools that are used to generate, okay, the executable of the application or the service, then you are in deep trouble. Because even if you check for bugs or vulnerabilities, the application, you do not realize, okay, that it is bug or there is security issues, because you have to look in somewhere else, okay, in a tool of the supply chain that is used in order to produce that particular artifact, which is the application that you are using, okay? And this is a very delicate, very delicate point, because when you trust a software, okay, you trust all the infrastructures, the supply chain that has been used to produce that software. So you trust a lot of technical code on the one hand, but also in the end, you trust the person, the developers that develop also that code. So if you are developing a tool, you don't trust only yourself, okay, but you trust also the others that offered you, build the tools that allows you to produce these applications, okay? This is a very delicate point that few realize. So in the end, every time we use a digital artifacts, we trust a lot of people that we are not even know, okay? So this is, if you think twice, you realize that there is a lot of trust in our digital world, even if in an implicit way, okay? And my final comment here is that it is possible now, there are attacks called supply chain attacks that are particularly under the focus of the NIS2 directive that has been mentioned before, exactly as the awareness and the management of human risk exactly in the same way, that are particularly interesting, because if you insert a malicious code in a tool that produces other programs, basically you have the opportunity to insert a malicious code in every applications or in every services that is produced by using that supply chain. And additionally, it's exactly the weakness that you can exploit without even identifying, making the effort to identify them, because you have inserted the weaknesses. And so you can do it, or you can exploit it easily because you have inserted it, okay? So the NIS2 directive is exactly addressing this kind of issues, which in the context of, for example, integrity that we discussed before, is very, very relevant, because if you are able to insert and exploit this kind of supply chain vulnerabilities, then a lot of images or all the digital artifacts that are generated by these generative AI techniques can be manipulated. And so even if you build a perfect, from a technical point of view, perfectly secure chain of custody, it is meaningless because it is created in a malicious way without anyone be able to detect that this is the case. So it's a very complex situation that we are facing.
Can I ask a follow-up question? Because I found those technical techniques of spotting that something was artificially generated very interesting. So you said about watermarking and cryptographic techniques. So this chain of custody process that actually allow us at the end to see the whole transformation process described. But for two follow-up questions. The first thing, please confirm whether all of these measures are only visible when you get into the file. You see, so they are not clearly visible for someone who is a recipient of such artificially generated content. The first question. And the second question was whether this watermarking techniques or any other labeling techniques are also available for text. So not an image, not audio, but something that is just written. I can copy paste the text everywhere.
Yeah, yes. I started from the last one. Yeah, they are available also for text. Basically, it is. I have hinted to them. Basically, you can modify the generation process of the generative AI algorithm in such a way that in certain positions of the text, there are certain words that, for example, start with certain letters. And if you pick 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them, then you create a particular keyword. Okay, so this is a possibility, basically. Okay, this is the kind of watermarking method or steganographic method that can be used also for text. Okay. The first question, sorry, I forgot. Was sorry.
The first question was about the fact that all of these techniques cannot be seen by a recipient of the artificially generated content. So I'm referring to what Gabriela said about the fact that, you know, it should be a measures for a regular person to spot it. And as labeling is the only legal measure that are actually provided to us as citizens, what can we do? Maybe there is something more that we haven't touched already and that can be helpful for us, because I'm referring, because our audience are lawyers. So obviously, for example, this deepfake problem, it already is a great problem within legal proceedings when it comes to evidences.
Sure.
Now, as the deepfakes production is democratic now, so everyone with a very simple prompt can produce very good deepfake. What can we do to assess what is reality, is what is no longer reality from the technical point of view?
Okay, So even experts in these fields have problem in spotting. Okay, let me start with this. Okay, so it's very difficult. Anyway, from a technical point of view, all these watermarking and cryptographic techniques, there are standards that can be used. And for example, there is one that is called C2PA, which is gaining traction, basically. And it is adopted by some social media. For example, on LinkedIn, most of the images support, LinkedIn support this kind of provenance standard, okay? So with the right tool, okay, so you need a tool as a citizen, as a user of this social media images, you can analyze the metadata that are associated to this image that tells you from where the image has been taken, basically, and which transformation that particular image suffered, okay, or has undergone, okay? So there are this kind of tools that are very easy. They are integrated in browsers. Even there are plugins for browsers that does this. Okay, but in reality, there are a lot of startups that are coming up nowadays. There is one here in Trento, for example, that does offer services in order to detect these fake images, for example, or fake videos. So the idea here is that they combine this kind of provenance techniques that I was talking about with more semantic ones. And these semantic ones are so-called passive forensics techniques. So typically, other AI algorithm analyze the image and finds, let's say, something that is odd or strange, okay? For example, what I mentioned before, the shadows of the light in the picture are not coherent. Maybe the proportions are not, for example, of parts of the bodies are not correct, so that this indicates that the image has been manipulated. This kind of stuff. So only a, let's say, a holistic approach of this kind, an integrated approach of this kind, could give you an idea of the fact that an image has been tampered or not, is artificial or not, is a deep fake or not. So it's really something that the scientific community is working on, and is a very active one, and promise to have a huge impact in practice, because nowadays we are really under a deluge, let's say, of misinformation, disinformation every hour, so not every day, every hour.
Thank you very much. So the conclusion is, and please confirm or deny if I'm mistaken, but all of those initiatives that you mentioned, this one on LinkedIn or the startup efforts, are voluntarily done. So it is not a legal provision forcing them to do so. Maybe that's the question to Gabriela from the legal point of view. There is no obligation in the AI Act, within AI Act, about having chain of custody in the files we produce, in the files we present to authorities, and so on and so forth. Confirmed? Confirmed. So as we are running out of time, I would like to ask whether there are some questions from audience. Good, good in a way that we are running out of time. I would like to ask my dear panelists to send the final message to all our participants. It's a broad topic. We couldn't reach even the small part of the issues that we're supposed to touch and even go deeper. But I would like to leave some message in our heads, very practical one. And Roberto, maybe we can start with you, because you've got the most practical experience and the most practical hints that you can share with us. So 1-2 sentences.
Wow.
Sorry.
don't trust what you can't trust. So we have to be aware that things are changing really fast, and that technology is knowing much more that we know about ourselves, much more that we know about ourselves. So technology can be used to do things that are against us, even in a non-voluntary way, by mistake. So we have to be careful. And I think that just to connect to what Silvio was saying, there are two meta properties that are directly linked to trust and transparency. He mentioned provenance. That means where an artifact comes from. Artifact means data, model, software. We are living in a constellation of softwares that talk to each other, and each element has a story, has something behind, and is potentially a point of weakness or failure. And the other one is the concept of lineage, genealogia in Italian. So this is something I was discussing with colleagues last week, colleagues that develop software. They want to use models, AI models, to support some features, and we were discussing, are you thinking about a method to manage lineage of the data and the models in the software? That means who developed that, who changed that, why, which affects this on the data, on the models, on the software. So these two elements, provenance and lineage, will be key for transparency and trust.
Thank you very much. Now 2 sentences from Professor Ranisse.
Yeah, I believe that the message that I can suggest is a call to action for an interdisciplinary approach, and more in general for more cooperation. I believe that several issues about trust can be solved like that. And we need to take inspiration from what cyber criminals do. When they attack a victim, they need several different capabilities. Each one is specialized in one capability, and they cooperate in order to build a complex attacks. We should do the same. We need to protect ourselves. We have capabilities. For example, we are very good in spotting some kind of strange features in a picture. Others are more into the cryptographic primitives that are needed for the provenance thing, etc. So if we join forces, we can cooperate and timely distribute information about attacks, for example, that are happening, or misinformation campaigns, etc., that are happening now. I believe that this kind of cyber threat intelligence, or intelligence in general, could contribute largely to understand what's going on, and if we have an information integrity problem or not. This is what I believe is very important. It's part of the awareness thing that we were discussing at the beginning.
Thank you very much. I'm really glad that you summarized everything in 2 sentences. Now 2 sentences from Gabriela.
2 sentences, it may be difficult, but I will try. Okay, so it was a lot about trust and trustworthiness of cybersecurity systems, of AI. Focusing on AI, I would say that the most important is a risk-based approach, and each time you have to deal with cybersecurity issues and AI, which is very helpful in protecting our data, our sources, do the impact assessment, risk assessment, if it's data protection, impact assessment, and others. And the other thing I want to say that very often we think, oh no, this right can't be executed, like right to erase your data from AI models. But it's apparently not true anymore, because there is a need to be compliant with the GDPR, with the AI Act. So people are very inventive, and really there are methods and techniques that allow us to make the model forget something like this. Like machine learning recently is a very quickly developing area, which is still very expensive, but it shows as an example that it's possible to have a balance between, let's say, practice and business needs and legal requirements.
Thank you very much. Thank you, dear panelists. It was a privilege for me to moderate this panel. Now there is some special moment during the conference. I would like to give the floor to Francesco Spina. It will be the most important moment from participants of the International Legal Tech Competition, which took place yesterday.
I kindly ask you all to remain seated. We'll keep some minutes of your time before lunch, but it's worth it. Thank you to all the panelists and the moderators, and thank you for paying attention to the time. You've all done great work, and you've all shared great food for thoughts, if you will. Just one request to the speakers and the moderators of the panels of this morning. After we wrap this session up before lunch, if you will remain for a picture outside with all the speakers and moderators of the panelists next to the exit. Now, back to business. As Maria mentioned, and you can see from the poster that is being shared behind them, we also celebrate today the winner of the International Legal Tech Competition of FB. As Francesco Tregnaghi mentioned earlier this morning, there is a reason why the Lucca Bar Association, the Trento Bar Association, and the Verona Bar Association gathered together for this occasion, started to think about, were allowed to think about this occasion in the first place, because we worked together at the tables of the New Technology Commission of FB, of which we are all members. And FB also hosts, amongst a few competitions, the International Legal Tech Competition. And this year marked a significant change of pace, because for the first time we decided to embark in a prompting competition, legal prompting competition. Yesterday, 10 participants from different European countries joined here in person to try and solve some tasks using generative AI, LLMs tools. And they've worked very hard. They've done a first stage, and then yesterday the final. But I have to commend also the work of the Commission, which, if possible, may have worked even harder than the participants, because it was very hard to come up with a winner. And then I leave the floor to Isabella.
Dear guests, dear participants, dear member of the jury, dear colleagues. I have been invited to announce the results of International Legal Tech Competition, which took place yesterday here in Lucca. Before revealing the results, I would like to invite all the members of the jury to the stage, as well as the members of the FB commissions.
One thing I forgot to mention, this competition was organized by 3 different commissions of FPE, and the New Technology Commission, the IP Commission, and the Access to Justice Commission, which is hosted by the Lucca Bar, and Isabella, side being past president of the FPE, she is also head of the IP Commission, so it's not a chance she's presenting this award, and sorry for not mentioning this before. I'm fatigue starting to creep in.
Thank you. I would like also to thank you very much. Flavia, can you join us as well? And the immediate past president, Marc Labé, he will also has his role now. And first of all, let me, after Francesco, express my sincere thanks to all the participants and members of the jury, as well as to those members of the FBE commissions who drafted, tested, and reviewed the cases. And it was really the hard job, much, much appreciated. There are 2 people I would like to thank in particular when it comes to this competition, Maria Dimitruk and Francesco Spina. Without your dedication and hard work, the competition wouldn't have happened. As for the results, it must be stressed that all the submissions were of a very high standard. The jury faced a very challenging task and deliberated for a few hours. Let me briefly explain the assessment criteria that we applied. Each participant was evaluated in 4 categories. Ethical use of generative AI, in particular, how carefully information was introduced into the system with due regard specifically for professional secrecy. Prompting skills, and here we must admit that we were genuinely impressed by the level of expertise demonstrated. In fact, even one entry went far beyond all our expectations. Merits, meaning the participants' legal knowledge on the chosen topic. Some of you even corrected ChatGPT and engaged in a thoughtful dialogue with the artificial intelligence, which we especially appreciate. Practical results for business clients. That was the 4th category. Whether the final outcome was clear, relevant, and responsive to real business needs rather than purely theoretical. Before I announce the winner, I would also like to mention that we have decided to give special recognition to 2 participants whose performance was truly outstanding. And this recognition goes to Rafał Skibicki,
Okay.
Now it's the right moment to congratulate you. Sorry.
Thanks very much.
Is it okay like that?
Thank you very much. That's a great pleasure.
And the second recognition goes, I hope I can pronounce the name properly, Inigo de la Puerta Zapata. Yes.
Inigo de la Puerta Zapata.
That's correct. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You could stand in front of the line, you two, to be clearly visible by all the audience.
And now I would like to ask all the participants to come to the stage. You are very welcome. We have and let me introduce all the participants. Daniel Kula, Jana Brezowicowa, Raul Lopez Gil,
Daniel Kula.
powiedziałam. And this is a right moment to thank also the Gdańsk Bar Association. We have here the representative among the jury member, Adam Chudziński, the member of the council, who has sponsored all the gifts for the participants. Thank you very much. Gracia Castro. Michalina Gdula. Jacopo Di Rutigliano. Martyna Mielniczuk-Skibicka. Yeah. No? Have you? No.
We missed one for Ricardo. Unforgettable fact.
No, don't worry.
We do not have certificate.
And now, without further delay, it's my great pleasure to announce that the winner of this year's International Legal Tech Competition is Martyna Mielniczuk-Skibicka. Let me disclose what is the main prize for this competition. This is the invitation to participate in the next General Congress of European Bar Federation, which will be held next year in June in Bucharest.
June the 12th, if I remember.
Once again, thank you to all the participants, to the jury members, congratulate the winner, and please give all the applause for their hard work, because yesterday they worked really for many hours. They came to Lucca yesterday, most of them, so it was really very intensive time for them. Thank you very much. And let me say that you are very much welcome and invited to take part in next editions of the competition. And we have the winner of the competition who took part in the first Future of Law Firm competition in Wrocław. He unfortunately didn't win then, but he won in the next edition. So we warmly welcome you to take part in the next editions of the competition. Thank you very much.
Ci ritroviamo alle 3 precise.
See you back here at 3 p.m., 10 to 3 p.m.
Grazie mille.
Customer systems for OpenAI, just to improve the way that they actually figure out to solve the case that way. Just to try to set up.
Don't leave your backpack. The main practice.